John Neely Kennedy was refused service at a restaurant. His next action shocked everyone. The sun sank low over Bayou Bend, painting the Louisiana sky in shades of amber and violet, as the humid air carried the scent of swamp grass and forgotten promises. This small town, nestled deep in the heart of Cajun country, was a shadow of its former self. Main Street, once alive with the chatter of shopkeepers and the rumble of shrimp boats unloading at the docks, now stood quiet. Its brick storefronts boarded up their faded signs, whispering tales of better days. A hardware store with a dusty closed sign, a beauty parlor with cracked windows, a bakery that hadn't baked in years. Bayou Bend was a town clinging to memories, its pulse fading with each passing season. At the center of it all stood the Rusty Ladle, a diner that had been feeding the town's soul for 40 years. Its neon sign flickered weakly, but inside the aroma of simmering gumbo, frying shrimp, and fresh-baked cornbread promised warmth and comfort to anyone who pushed through its creaky glass-paneled door. The Rusty Ladle wasn't just a place to eat. It was where fishermen swapped stories, where widows found company, where kids scribbled on paper placemats, while their parents planned the week ahead. It was the heartbeat of Bayou Bend, faint but stubborn, refusing to give up even as the town around it crumbled. Senator John Neely Kennedy, his rumpled navy suit and slightly crooked tie giving him the air of a man who'd been on the road too long, pulled his dusty SUV into the diner's gravel lot. The dashboard clock glowed dimly, and his stomach growled louder than a bayou alligator after a long day of campaign stops across South Louisiana. 3 rallies, a radio interview that dragged on, and a town hall where folks had grilled him about everything from taxes to coastal erosion. It had been exhausting. All he wanted was a hot plate of food, a cold glass of sweet tea, and a moment to breathe. Known across the state for his folksy charm, sharp wit, and knack for connecting with people Kennedy was used to, doors swinging wide when he walked in. In Baton Rouge or New Orleans, restaurant hosts would scramble to seat him. Managers would offer compliments on his latest speech, and folks would line up for a handshake or a quick photo. So when he pushed open the door of the Rusty Ladle, the bell jingling above his head, he expected the usual, a warm greeting, a prime table, maybe a few curious glances from locals who recognized the senator with the drawl as smooth as molasses. Instead, he was met by Clara Boudreau, the diner's owner, a wiry woman with salt and pepper hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that could stare down a hurricane. Her apron, embroidered with a faded ladle, was stained with grease and flour from a day's work, and she clutched a notepad like it was a shield. "Evening, Senator," she said, barely glancing up from scribbling an order. Her voice was polite but firm, with the kind of Cajun lilt that made every word sound like it was carved from oak. "Got a 30-minute wait for a table. Put your name on the list over there." She nodded toward a clipboard by the door, where a dozen names were scrawled in uneven handwriting, some with little stars or doodles beside them. Kennedy froze, one hand still on the door handle, his eyebrows shooting up. 30 minutes, he said, his drawl stretching the words. He craned his neck, spotting an empty booth in the corner, its red vinyl seat catching the glow of the diner's warm yellow lights. "I see a table right there, ma'am. Looks empty to me." He flashed his trademark grin, the one that had won over voters from Shreveport to Slidell, expecting her to soften. Clara didn't blink. "That's reserved," she said, her tone as unyielding as the cypress trees lining the bayou. "Folks called this morning. At the Rusty Ladle, everybody waits their turn, no exceptions." She tapped her pen against the notepad, her eyes locking onto his, with a look that said she'd faced down bigger storms than a politician's ego. The diner buzzed around them, oblivious to the standoff. At a nearby table, a group of fishermen laughed over plates of fried catfish, their voices rough with the day's work. A young couple shared a slice of pecan pie, their hands brushing as they talked. An old man in a faded cap read a newspaper, sipping coffee so dark it looked like motor oil. The air was thick with the smell of Cajun spices, melted butter, and something sweet baking in the back. Maybe cornbread, maybe pie. Nobody seemed to notice the senator standing there, his mouth slightly open, his hunger clawing at him like a crab in a trap. In any other town, his name would have parted the crowd like Moses at the Red Sea. But here in this tiny speck of a place, John Neely Kennedy was just another hungry soul. He tried again, lowering his voice to that confiding tone he used on the campaign trail. "Ma'am, I'm John Kennedy, Senator. Been on the road since dawn, and I'm hungrier than a bear come springtime. Surely you can squeeze me in at that booth." He tilted his head, expecting the usual spark of recognition, the quick nod, the apologetic smile, as someone made room for the man who'd been on every TV screen in Louisiana. Clara squinted, sizing him up like he was a customer trying to haggle over a check. "Senator or not, you wait like everybody else," she said, her voice cutting through the diner's hum. "Name on the list or try the burger joint out by the highway. They close early, though, so you'd best hurry." She turned away, calling to a regular at the counter. "Miss Lorraine, your gumbo's up. Want extra hot sauce." Kennedy's face flushed a mix of irritation and disbelief. He wasn't used to being dismissed, not by anyone, let alone a diner owner in a town he could barely find on a map. The smell of frying shrimp and warm cornbread was torture mocking his empty stomach. He glanced around, half expecting someone to intervene, to whisper to Clara who he was, but the diners kept eating, talking, laughing, as if one of Louisiana's most powerful men wasn't standing there hungry and ignored. Pride stung harder than hunger. "Fine," he muttered, snatching his keys from his pocket. "I'll find somewhere else." The bell jingled again as he stormed out, the sound sharp and mocking in the humid evening air. The burger joint by the highway was dark, its closed for repairs sign barely visible in the fading light. The only other option was a gas station, a mile out, its fluorescent lights buzzing over a sad rack of sandwiches wrapped in plastic, looking like they'd been there since the Nixon administration. Kennedy bought a bag of pork rinds and a lukewarm Coke, the cashier barely glancing at him. He drove to the Bayou Bend Motel, a low-slung building with peeling paint and a neon vacancy sign that flickered like it was on its last legs. His room was clean but sparse, with a lumpy mattress and a faint smell of mildew. Sitting on the edge of the bed, crunching his pork rinds, he couldn't shake the image of the rusty ladle. The warm glow through its windows, the clatter of plates, the easy laughter of people who knew each other's stories. It was real. In a way, his usual world of polished offices and staged photo ops wasn't. Clara's words echoed in his head. Everybody waits their turn. When was the last time anyone had treated him like just another guy? He couldn't remember. He pulled out his phone and searched for the rusty ladle. The website was simple, almost old-fashioned, with a grainy photo of the diner and a tagline family-owned since 1983. Home cooking like Mama made. The reviews were glowing 5 stars for the crawfish etouffee, 4 for the gumbo raves about Clara's pecan pie that could make a grown man cry. But buried in the comments were hints of trouble. Heard they're struggling with the bank. Equipment's breaking down. Shame if this place closes. It's all Bayou Bend's got left. Kennedy scrolled through his pork rinds, forgotten. The diner wasn't just a business. It was the glue holding a dying town together. He thought of Clara's firm stance, her refusal to bend even for a senator. It wasn't arrogance, it was principle. Something about that stirred him like a memory he couldn't quite place. Sleep wouldn't come. At 2 a.m., Kennedy sat up, his mind racing. He wasn't angry anymore. He was hooked. Clara's diner wasn't just a place to eat. It was a piece of something bigger, something worth saving. He grabbed his phone and started typing notes. Save the rusty ladle. Help Bayou Bend. How loans investment jobs. His fingers flew, ideas piling up faster than he could type. By 4 a.m., he'd sent a flurry of emails to his staff, canceled his next day's campaign stops, and created a document titled Operation Rusty Ladle. He paced the small room, the carpet rough under his bare feet, muttering to himself. I could buy the place, he said aloud, then shook his head. That wasn't right. Buying it would kill what made it special. No, this was about something else, something real, something that mattered more than a quick political win. The next morning, Kennedy was back at the Rusty Ladle by 6 a.m., just as the open sign flicked on. The diner was quiet, with only a few early risers hunched over coffee mugs. Clara raised an eyebrow as he walked in, her hands busy wiping down the counter. Back so soon? Senator, she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. I'm a glutton for punishment, ma'am, he replied, flashing a grin as he added his name to the wait list. He stood by the door watching the diner come to life. A young man in a grease-stained shirt, Etienne, Clara's son, moved between tables, clearing plates and joking with customers. Kennedy overheard him talking about his dream of opening a mechanic shop, stalled by a lack of money. An older woman, Miss Lorraine, sipped coffee while reading a worn novel, her face etched with the quiet pride of someone who'd seen the town's better days. A young mother, Marie, sat alone at the counter, her eyes tired, grateful as Clara slid a free bowl of soup her way. The conversations around him were a tapestry of Bayou Bend's struggles, lost jobs at the shrimp plant, kids moving away, hope fading like the paint on Main Street's buildings. When his name was called, Kennedy slid into a booth and ordered the breakfast special, 3 eggs, sausage, grits, and biscuits slathered in butter. The first bite of biscuit, fluffy, warm with a hint of sweetness, made him close his eyes. This wasn't just food. It was care, crafted by hands that knew their work. As he ate, he listened, his politician's ear catching fragments of the town's story. Plant closed 2 years ago, one man said. Ain't been right since. My boy's in Houston now, another replied. Nothing here for him. Kennedy's mind churned. This town wasn't dead, it was waiting for a spark. And Clara's diner, with its stubborn rules and heart, was the key. After breakfast, he approached Etienne, who was stacking plates behind the counter. Heard you're good with engines, son, Kennedy said, leaning casually against the counter. Ever thought about opening your own shop? Etienne paused, wiping his hands on a rag, his eyes wary. Thought about it plenty, Senator. Money's the problem. Always is. Kennedy nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. He paid his bill, left a generous tip, and stepped outside into the morning heat. The air smelled of damp earth and possibility. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Get me everything you can on Bayou Bend's economy, he said, his voice firm. And clear my schedule for the week. I'm staying put. The Rusty Ladle had gotten under his skin, and Senator John Neely Kennedy was about to do something that would shock everyone. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more tales of heart community and unexpected heroes, please consider supporting our channel with a donation. Your support helps us keep crafting stories that inspire and entertain, bringing small-town magic to life. Visit our donation page. Insert link placeholder. To contribute, every little bit helps us keep the stories coming. Thank you for being part of our community, and stay tuned for the next chapter of Bayou Bend's revival. Bayou Bend stirred slowly under the weight of another humid Louisiana morning, its streets quiet, save for the hum of cicadas and the occasional clatter of a pickup truck rattling over potholes. The town's pulse was faint, its main street a patchwork of shuttered dreams, empty storefronts, cracked sidewalks, and faded signs that hadn't seen fresh paint in years. At the edge of town, the old shrimp processing plant stood like a rusted monument to better days, its chain-link fence sagging under the weight of neglect. Yet, amidst the decay, the rusty ladle shone like a stubborn ember, its neon sign buzzing faintly as locals gathered for lunch, their voices weaving stories of hope and hardship over plates of jambalaya and pecan pie. Senator John Neely Kennedy, his SUV parked crookedly in the diner's gravel lot, saw more than a struggling town. He saw a spark waiting to be fanned into a flame, and he was determined to be the one to do it. After his unexpected wait at the Rusty Ladle, Kennedy had canceled his campaign stops, trading polished podiums for the gritty reality of Bayou Bend. His motel room at the Bayou Bend Motel was now a makeshift command center, its walls pinned with maps of the town, scribbled notes, and a dog-eared notebook labeled Operation Rusty Ladle. He'd spent his second day walking Main Street, his loafers kicking up dust. As he jotted observations, the abandoned hardware store could be a community workshop. The old bakery might house a co-op. But his focus kept returning to the diner, the heart of this fading town, and the woman who ran it. Clara Boudreau, whose refusal to bend had ignited something in him he couldn't ignore. He wasn't here for a quick photo op or a campaign stunt. He was here to build something real, something that could outlast the next election cycle. Kennedy began his campaign quietly, slipping into town hall to meet Mayor Lucille Fontenot, a no-nonsense woman with a Cajun accent thick as roux and a skepticism honed by years of broken promises. Her office was cluttered with files and framed photos of Bayou Bend in its heyday, shrimp boats docked Main Street bustling. "Why's a senator poking around our little town, Mr. Kennedy?" she asked, leaning back in her chair, arms crossed. "You planning to slap your name on a bridge and call it a day?" Kennedy chuckled, his drawl easy but earnest. "No bridges, Madame Mayor. I'm here because Clara Boudreau wouldn't give me a table, and that's the most honest thing I've seen in a coon's age. The Rusty Ladle's the heart of Bayou Bend, but it's struggling. So's this town. I want to help, starting with the diner, then bigger. Jobs, businesses, hope." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "But I need your help to make it work." Lucille studied him, her eyes narrowing. "Folks round here don't trust outsiders with big plans. Last developer promised. A mall left us with nothing but debt. What's your angle?" "No angle," Kennedy said. "Just a hunch that Bayou Bend's worth saving. Let me prove it." After a long pause, Lucille nodded. "Show me a plan, Senator. No funny business." It was the opening he needed. Kennedy moved fast, his phone buzzing with calls to his staff in Washington and contacts in Baton Rouge. He reached out to investors he'd known for years, businessmen who owed him favors, philanthropists who liked a good story. His first target was the Rusty Ladle's looming foreclosure. A call to Mr. Thibodeau, manager of First Bayou Bank, revealed the diner owed $50,000, with the bank ready to seize it in weeks. Kennedy negotiated a 2-month extension, hinting he'd cover the debt himself, if needed. "Keep this quiet," he told Thibodeau. "No need to get folks' hopes up till it's real." But in a town like Bayou Bend, secrets were as hard to keep as crawfish in a leaky bucket. Back at the Rusty Ladle, Kennedy became a regular, always waiting his turn, his presence drawing curious glances from locals. He listened more than he talked, his politician's ear tuned to the town's rhythm. At the counter, Miss Lorraine, a retired teacher who ran the library, spoke of dwindling funds and a leaky roof. "Kids need books, Senator," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But we're down to one computer and prayers." Nearby, Marie, a young single mother, thanked Clara for a free bowl of soup, her eyes tired from night shifts at a gas station. "Ain't much work here," she admitted when Kennedy asked. "But I can't leave my mama's sick," Etienne, Clara's son, wiped down tables his grease-stained shirt, a badge of long hours fixing cars for neighbors who couldn't pay much. "I want my own shop," he told Kennedy over a coffee refill. "But banks don't lend to folks like me." Each story was a thread in Bayou Bend's unraveling tapestry, and Kennedy was determined to weave it back together. His plan took shape, saved the diner, then revived the old shrimp plant as a sustainable seafood facility, creating jobs and training locals in modern techniques. The plant, shuttered for 2 years, was structurally sound, but needed serious investment. Kennedy scouted it himself, ducking under rusted beams and jotting notes on his phone. He called contractors for estimates, secured permits through back channels, and began negotiations to buy the plant from the bank at a bargain. All the while, he kept his moves under wraps, knowing premature hope could break a town like this. But whispers spread. Some said he was a developer planning condos. Others feared a political stunt. At the diner, Clara remained skeptical. "Politicians don't stick around," she told Etienne after Kennedy left one day. "He's got an agenda, mark my words." Trouble hit on the 4th day. A sudden storm swept through, dumping rain that turned Main Street to mud. At the Rusty Ladle, water poured through the roof, dripping onto tables and pooling on the floor. Clara closed for the day, her face etched with worry as she mopped up. Kennedy stopped by, finding her staring at the damage. "Roof's been bad for years," she said, her voice tight. "Can't afford a new one. Banks circling and the stove's on its last legs." She eyed him warily. "You still want to talk business, Senator?" "I do," he said, stepping over a puddle. "Not to buy you out, Clara. To help you keep this place." She scoffed. "Charity. We don't take handouts." "Not charity." Kennedy replied, his grin disarming. "An investment. In you, this diner, this town. Give me a chance to show you." Clara hesitated, then agreed to meet after closing. That night, over a pot of coffee, Kennedy laid out his plan to pay off the diner's loan and fund repairs. "Why?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Because you treated me like everybody else," he said. "That's rarer than a blue moon in these parts." The storm's damage was a setback, but Kennedy saw opportunity. He contacted a roofing contractor, promising payment from his own pocket if needed. He met with Miss Lorraine, sketching out a plan for a community education program at the library, free classes in coding mechanics, even shrimp processing. He spoke with Marie, offering her a spot in the plant's future workforce. "You're smart, hard-working," he told her. "We'll need folks like you." By day 6, his motel room was a war room, blueprints of the shrimp plant. A budget for the diner, a list of investors. He worked late, fueled by black coffee, and the memory of Clara's crawfish étouffée, its taste lingering like a promise. But doubts crept in. Etienne confronted him at the motel one night, his arms crossed. "Folks say you're buying up the town," he said. "You gonna tear down Mama's diner for some big project?" Kennedy invited him in, spreading out the plant's blueprints. "I'm not tearing anything down, son. I'm building something up. Give me one more day." Etienne studied the plans, his jaw tight, then nodded. "One day, Senator. Don't let us down." As the door closed, Kennedy stared at the maps on his wall. The Rusty Ladle's roof was a ticking clock, and Bayou Bend's hopes hung in the balance. He wasn't just fighting for a diner, he was fighting for a town's soul, and he wasn't about to lose. Dawn broke over Bayou Bend, the sun glinting off the muddy waters of the bayou, but the Rusty Ladle remained dark, its windows shrouded in heavy tarps. The absence of Clara Boudreau's truck in the gravel lot sent a shiver of panic through the town. "She's never missed a day, not even when her husband passed." Miss Lorraine, whispered to a growing crowd of regulars outside the diner, their faces tight with worry. Etienne, Clara's son, fielded frantic calls from customers, his voice strained as he repeated, "Mama left a note saying she'd be back, but she ain't picking up." Rumors swirled had the bank seized the diner. Had Clara finally given up? Worse, Senator John Neely Kennedy was nowhere to be seen. His SUV gone, his motel room empty. "He's done something to Clara," a waitress muttered, sparking murmurs of betrayal. Etienne shook his head, but doubt gnawed at him. A search party formed, fanning out across the town, checking the bayou's edge and the rusted gates of the old shrimp plant. Mayor Lucille Fontenot, oddly serene amidst the chaos, waved off their fears. "Hold tight," she said, her Cajun lilt. "Steady. Things ain't always what they look like." As dusk painted the sky and hues of purple headlights pierced the gathering gloom on Main Street, Clara's truck rumbled into view, and she stepped out. Exhaustion etched into her face, but a faint smile playing on her lips. Before the crowd could swarm her with questions, the Rusty Ladle's neon sign blazed to life, the tarps falling away to reveal a transformed diner. The faded exterior gleamed with fresh paint. The roof sparkled with new shingles and the windows shone spotless. Inside, polished wooden floors replaced cracked linoleum tables, glowed with fresh varnish, and the kitchen was a marvel new stainless steel appliances, a walk-in fridge and a gleaming espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a big city cafe. The crowd gasped, pressing forward as Clara unlocked the door, the bell jingling with a brighter chime. Kennedy stood in the doorway, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his grin as wide as the Mississippi. "Ladies and gentlemen of Bayou Bend," he called, his drawl carrying over the murmurs, "Clara Boudreaux and I invite you to the new Rusty Ladle." The townsfolk poured in their voices, rising in awe. Clara hugged Etienne, tears brimming as she explained, "He flew me to New Orleans on a private plane to pick out equipment. Had 3 crews working all night to fix this place." Kennedy climbed onto the counter, steadying himself as the crowd hushed. "The Rusty Ladle's debt is gone. $50,000 paid in full. New roof, new kitchen, all covered. But that's just the appetizer." He paused, eyes twinkling. "I've bought the old shrimp plant. Construction starts next week to make it a sustainable seafood facility. 300 jobs to start training included locals first." The diner erupted in cheers, hats flying, strangers hugging. Mayor Lucille added, "And the senator's funding, a tech center at the library, free classes for all, from coding to welding." Etienne, still reeling, pushed through the crowd. "Why us, Senator?" he asked, voice thick. Kennedy's smile softened as he pulled a faded photo from his wallet, a young woman in a diner apron laughing at a counter. "My mama grew up in Bayou Bend," he said, holding up the photo. "Her aunt worked at the Bayou Spoon, where this diner stands now. She taught Mama her crawfish étouffée recipe, the same one Clara serves. That taste hit me like a thunderbolt, brought back summers I spent here as a boy before we moved to Baton Rouge." The crowd fell silent, hanging on his words. "I didn't know it was this town till that étouffée woke me up. When Clara made me wait my turn, it reminded me what matters: real folks, real places. This town's worth saving." The celebration spilled into the night, Clara firing up her new kitchen to feed the crowd. Gumbo bubbled, cornbread baked, and the air filled with laughter. Etienne announced he'd open his garage funded by a grant Kennedy secured. Marie, hired at the plant, beamed her future brighter. Then a surprise Kennedy's sister Ellen arrived, her eyes wet as she embraced him. "Mama's stories about this town brought us back together," she told Clara. "Thank you," Months later, Bayou Bend thrived 350 jobs at the plant, a bustling tech center and the Rusty Ladle catering to workers. Kennedy visited often, always waiting his turn. At the one-year anniversary, a reporter asked why he'd invested millions. "Heart," he said, savoring étouffée. "This town taught me being ordinary in the right place can change everything."